Welcome to the Regenerative Agriculture, Thriving as a Modern Rancher, the podcast for ranchers and land stewards looking to build healthy land, profitable businesses, and a fulfilling life. Join us as we explore regenerative practices and holistic management to help you thrive in today's ranching world. It's not often you see three powerhouse organizations, each with their own history, language, and way of teaching, stand on the same stage and deliver the same core message. But at this year's Grazing School, that's exactly what happened. And the surprising part, they all agreed that your mindset, not just the application of the grazing principles, might be the biggest factor in your land's productivity and profitability. Hello there, Christine here. After a busy schedule of teaching and attending workshops, including attending the pre-conference Grazing School ahead of the Small Family Farmer and Food System Conference, where I delivered a couple presentations and hosted by Small Producers Initiative and Farm and Freedom Alliance at Texas State University in San Marcos, Texas, where I was reminded that a holistic mindset in land stewardship is essential for boosting productivity and profitability, a principle not just championed by Holistic Management International, but equally embraced by Understanding Ag and Noble Research Institute. This year's Grazing School was taught by three different organizations: Understanding Ag, Noble Research Institute, and Holistic Management International. The first time the three organizations have taught regenerative grazing together. If you're not aware of these three different organizations, let me just give you a brief description. Understanding Ag was started by Gabe Brown and Dr. Alan Williams and is a regenerative agricultural consulting firm passionately dedicated to revitalizing farm and ranch ecosystems. Their mission is to empower farmers, ranchers, landowners, businesses, and communities through education, mentorship, and time-tested ecological principles, helping them reduce input costs, boost profitability, and secure a sustainable, resilient future for family farming. Founded in 1945 by oil man Lloyd Noble, Noble's early mission was rooted in soil conservation and land stewardship in the wake of the Dust Bowl. Noble Research Institute is the nation's largest independent nonprofit agricultural research organization, now dedicated to guiding farmers and ranchers in applying regenerative principles that promote healthy soils, productive grazing lands, and financially resilient operations. And finally, Holistic Management International, founded in 1984 by Alan Savory and his wife Jody Butterfield, originally known as the Center for Holistic Management, then Holistic Resource Management, then Holistic Management International, until Alan Savory left and started the Savory Institute. Holistic Management International is a global nonprofit based in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Their core mission is to educate and equip land stewards, from farmers and ranchers to tribal and conservation groups, with a holistic management framework that integrates environmental, social, and economic considerations. While Understanding Ag, Noble Research Institute, and Holistic Management International all champion regenerative grazing, they arrive at it from very different histories and starting points. And those roots influence how they teach, the words they use, and the emphasis they place on certain principles. Understanding Ag is a practitioner-driven, relatively young organization started by Gabe Brown and Dr. Alan Williams, as I've just said, along with other farmer consultants who have lived the transition to regenerative grazing. They've transitioned themselves, they've experienced all the struggles and the successes, and they share that. The language is straightforward and field-tested, often framed around their 6-3-4 framework, which includes the 6 principles of soil health, the 3 rules of adaptive stewardship, and 4 ecosystem processes. They lean heavily into real-world examples and adaptive application, speaking directly to practical realities producers face. Noble Research Institute has deep research roots to address soil conservation. Historically known for agronomic and economic research, Their shift in 2020 and 2021 to regenerative grazing focus reframed their work. As part of that transition, they took training from both Savory Institute and Holistic Management International, integrating whole system principles into their programming. Even so, they continue to speak strongly in the language of research, data, and measurable outcomes. Their approach blends science with producer engagement, but their terminology often reflects an academic and research-oriented lens. Holistic Management International has been refining and teaching a systems thinking management framework since 1984. And its roots is helping land stewards make management decisions that integrate environmental, social, and financial health. Their terminology, including holistic context, ecosystem processes, quality of life goals, emphasize the whole system and the human decision maker's role in it, rather than prescriptive practices. These differences in background shape how each organization tells the regenerative grazing story. One speaks from lived adaptive practice. One speaks from decades of research applied to working lands. And one speaks from a whole systems management lens. When they come together, those differences can sound like different dialects of the same regenerative language, each adding depth, nuance, and credibility to the conversation. As an educator, I went into this grazing school with my eyes open, not just to learn new content, because I can always learn something, but to listen to how the content was being taught. My concern was that with 3 different organizations on the stage, Understanding Ag, Noble Research Institute, and Holistic Management International, we might hear 3 very different approaches that could confuse the audience. I've seen it happen before. Well-intentioned educators lean heavily on prescriptive advice, do this, don't do that, or get locked into sharing data and research without connecting the dots to the bigger picture. That's what I mean by reductionist. You're looking at one piece of the puzzle in isolation instead of the whole system it belongs to. The problem with that approach is that it can leave land stewards chasing somebody else's recipe instead of developing the skills to read their own land and make their own context-based decisions. When teaching regenerative grazing, the how matters just as much as the what. What I found was not 3 completely different stories pulling in opposite directions, but 3 perspectives that complemented each other far more than I expected. Understanding Ag spoke in plain, practical terms, grounded in lived experience. Their language made regenerative grazing approachable, especially for producers looking for clear starting points. Noble Research Institute, even with its research-heavy background, didn't just bury us in charts and numbers. Yes, they brought in the science, but they also connected it back to on-the-ground application and producer engagement. You could tell their shift to regenerative grazing in 2020 and 2021 has influenced their approach. Holistic Management International kept the focus on systems thinking, on the decision maker's role, the whole context, and the interconnectedness of land, livestock, finances, and the people managing and making the decisions. What struck me most was that, even when terminology differed, the underlying message was consistent. Regenerative grazing works best when it's adaptive, responsive, and guided by what the land is telling you, not by a rigid formula. This was research balanced with systems thinking and data paired with real-world decision-making. This is more than just one interesting observation about 3 organizations playing well together. It has real implications for your application of regenerative grazing principles and for your management mindset. When advice and terminology vary, especially across respected voices, they can be overwhelming for new learners. You might wonder, which one is right? Whose method should I follow? That's when it's easy to slip into collecting techniques without knowing if they fit your land, your context, and your goals. A truly holistic mindset isn't about memorizing the right way. It's about developing the ability to observe, interpret, and respond to what your land is telling you. When you learn from different perspectives and keep your context front and center, you can become the confident decision maker your land needs. That's the gift I saw in this grazing school. 3 different voices reinforcing the same truth. You don't manage land by controlling it. You manage it by being in relationship with it. If you have the opportunity to attend the pre-conference grazing school ahead of the Small Family Farmers and Food System Conference next year, put on by Small Producers Initiative and Farm and Freedom Alliance, I highly, highly recommend this comprehensive program. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone who could benefit from it and follow the podcast for more practical applications of holistic management. Thank you. Talk to you next time. Thanks for listening to Regenerative Agriculture, Thriving as a Modern Rancher. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, share with fellow ranchers, and leave a review. Together we can regenerate our lands, our profits, and our lives. Until next time, keep thriving.